tribesmen. Since their annexation to India, Kashmir citizens have had their rights, which has been embedded in the Indian constitution, taken from them. One example of this was when the Indian government rendered Article 370 inoperative. Article 370 gave Kashmir an aspect of independence in which they were able to govern their own affairs in foreign countries and were able to have their own constitution. This article was implemented on October 17, 1949, but deemed inoperative in April 2018. After hearing the court's decision, many outraged Kashmir citizens petitioned for the reversal of the court's decision. The Supreme Court heard the petitions on September 30, 2019, but has yet to release a reply or undo their original decision. Along with refusing to acknowledge the discontent of Kashmir citizens, the Washington Post reported that on August 5, 2019, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government revoked the constitutional anatomy of Jammu and Kashmir, India's only Muslim majority state, scrapped a separate constitution, splitting it into two federal territories, and removed inherent protections on land and jobs. India's action and harsh security crackdown has sparked anger and economy ruin in the region. By ceding to India, India has caused more harm than good for Kashmir. 2. Kashmir's economy is predominantly dependent on agriculture export, which include apples, barley, cherries, saffron, vegetables, and wheat, manufactured export, which include handcrafts, rugs, and shawls, and tourism. After the Indian government revocation of Article 370, India placed Kashmir in a mandatory security lockdown and communication blackout. The goal of the lockdown blackout was to preemptively curb unrest and violence and protests. However, the real result of the lockdown and blackout was the destruction of Kashmir's economy. The lockdown officially started on August 5, 2019. Days before August 5, 2019, the decision by the Indian central government, authorities asked hundreds of thousands of tourists, Hindu pilgrims, and migrant workers to leave the territory, shutting its economy. Since then, tens of thousands of jobs have been lost. The diplomat reported a loss of $2.4 billion in the first 4 months of lockdown for Kashmir, and the estimated industry loss for January 2020 to June 2020 estimated around to be $2.9 billion. When asked about Kashmir's economy, KCCI President Sheikha Eshi told the diplomat that the economy is a complete mess and they have an estimated loss of $5.3 billion in the 10 months of lockdown. Under control of the Indian government, Kashmir has been under lockdown, in which it still remains till this day, whereas citizens have lost their jobs and its economy is in ruin. Along with having their rights stripped from them and their economy ruined, the Indian government has been the subject of many human rights abuse against the citizens of Kashmir, many including wrongful death at the hands of Indian armed forces, excessive use of force and firearm on civilians, multiple massacres, torture, and thousands of rape allegations, just to name a few. As stated in Volume 5, Issue 9 of Rape in Kashmir, A Crime of War by Asian Watch and Physicians for Human Rights, a division of Human Rights Watch, it was reported that during the week PHR, Asian Watch conducted investigations in Kashmir. They documented 15 cases of rape, 44 extrajudicial executions, 8 cases of torture, 20 injuries resulting in the indiscriminate shooting of non-combatants by Indian Army and security force personnel. Data released in 2011 by the Jammu and Kashmir government stated that in the last 21 years, 43,460 people have been killed in the Kashmir insurgency. Of these, 21,323 are militants, 13,226 civilians killed by militants, 3,642 civilians killed by security forces, and 5,369 policemen killed by militants. According to a report by Human Rights Watch in 1993, the security forces used rape as a method of retaliation against Kashmiri civilians during reprisal attacks after militants ambushed. I know it may seem like I'm spitting low numbers at you, but you guys must remember that behind all the numbers I've said is a real human being. Thousands have died at the hand of the Indian government use of excessive force, and each person who has died had a family that mourned their loss. Behind each rape statistic is a woman who had their life altered and their security threatened. We sit here debating whether Kashmir should remain under the control of a government who has abused their power and has frightened and killed their citizens to the point where many have gone without reporting. This is not a matter of right and wrong, it is a matter of human empathy. We would not allow a child to remain in a house with abusive parents, so why should we allow Kashmir to remain under the control of the Indian government? That was my speech. Now I'm just going to go on to my rebuttals. Although Article 370 was temporary, it has been in place for decades. India gave no warning to Kashmir that they were going to revoke it, thus affecting their government and the way the country runs. A relationship runs on communication, and if India can't even communicate with Kashmir about something that can greatly affect them, then what is the purpose of the relationship? India is imposing laws without communicating with the people that it may affect, and that's no way to run a country. Two, majority of the so-called terrorism that's been peaceful protests by Kashmir citizens that have turned violent at the hands of Indian government. Since Kashmir is under a communication blackout, they are unable to share their sides of the story. As the famous quote goes, history is written by the winners. And in this case, India has won by dehumanizing Kashmir. They are able to spin the story however they please. India depicts Kashmir in a negative light, saying they are terrorists, without acknowledging their own part in the violence. During a protest, 200 protesters were detained, not arrested and prosecuted, but detained. A few of those detained were Kashmiri politicians. Three, India wanted to integrate Kashmir into India. The thing many fail to realize is their distinct demographic. As reported in the 2011 census, India is a Hindu majority country in which 79.8% of Indians practice Hinduism, opposed to Kashmir, which is a Muslim majority in which 68.3% of Kashmiri practices Islam. They say India has three, four. They say India has the legal right to retain Kashmir, and I agree. I'm not here to post the legitimacy of the instrument of accession, but shed a light on the climate in which this decision was made. All because India has a right and ability to control Kashmir doesn't mean it is right and that they should do it. I have the right and ability to walk out of class during school, but it doesn't mean it is right or that I should do it. Five, I've talked about why India should not retain control of Kashmir, but now I will talk about how they will go about it, doing so. At the Motiva Convention of 1933, many world powers came together to define statehood and the requirements for aspiring independent nations. In the convention, four requirements were made for a territory to seek statehood. As stated by the BBC, the four requirements a territory needs are a people, a territory, a government, and the ability to conduct relations with other states on a sovereign basis. Before India revoked Article 370, Kashmir had a thriving economy and government where they were able to manage their own foreign affairs and they had their own constitution. The fact of the matter is that Kashmir fulfills all the requirements, and the citizens of Kashmir want independence. According to a 2007 poll conducted by the Center for the Study of Developing Societies in New Delhi, 87% of respondents in the Kashmir Valley prefer independence over union with India or Pakistan. Kashmir wants independence and fulfills all the requirements to do so. I'll go to my reply speech now, the ending. As humans on Earth, evolution is essential to our survival. This may be adapting to a certain environment by sharing the way you dress or behave, or just changing outdated policies that don't benefit either party. In this case, India no longer retaining control over Kashmir is essential to the survival and development of Kashmir citizens. By Kashmir retaining control, by Kashmir remaining under the control of India, it continues to suffer politically, socially, and economically. How does India exporting Kashmir benefit anyone? When territories remain part of a nation, it is mutually beneficial for both parties. But in this case, neither party are benefiting from this. All India is gaining from this exchange is the right to say they own Kashmir. Owning something doesn't always mean it is beneficial and can sometimes be detrimental. India has denied Kashmir citizens basic rights that all Indian citizens have. They have revoked parts of their constitution to render Kashmir powerless without their knowledge. Because of this, Kashmir was forced into a military lockdown communication blackout in which its economy is left in ruins, which Kashmir has lost billions of dollars and will continue to lose. Their complaints are left unheard as hundreds are detained while trying to peacefully protest. The Indian government has abused their political power over Kashmir, leaving them defenseless. Thousands have died under the Indian government's control and will continue to unless something is done. Why should the citizens of Kashmir be forced to remain part of a country which fails to recognize them and their opinions? They are treated as second-class citizens in which the military exploits them for political and personal gains. Kashmir has always wanted independence from the beginning, but the sole reason they chose to cede to India in the first place was because they were amidst a conflict with Pakistani tribesmen, in which India has something Kashmir needed: protection. That was over 70 years ago, and the situation has changed. India is no longer Kashmir's ally, but their enemy, one that desires to have them in their grasp because they do not want Kashmir to go to anyone else, nor do they want Kashmir to thrive as an independent nation. That's it. I'm done.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Or PFI?
I have a question. So do you think that India would respond with violence towards Kashmir, possibly endangering its citizens? Should Kashmir begin to take steps to become autonomous once again?
I wouldn't put it past the Indian government to use violence as a force to get to their means, just because they've done it in the past and continue to do it. However, Kashmir do have allies, both foreign countries, that they have made through their foreign policies and foreign affairs in the past prior to the revocation of Article 370. So I do feel their allies can come and aid Kashmir as they seek independence.
My question is, I guess that kind of goes along with what Olivia says. What do you think is the most effective way for Kashmir to go about their independence or seceding from India, if there is one? Or what do you see is the best plan for Kashmir at the moment?
Well, I obviously feel that independence is the best course of action. Of course, many people have debated whether it's better for them to remain under with India, become independent, or even go to Pakistan. But I feel Kashmir becoming independent will, well, first it would stop the conflict between India and Pakistan because neither of them will have this territory. And for them to go about it, I feel like the first step is first to like end the military lockdown and the communication blackout, because without, especially with the communication blackout, they aren't able to have their opinions shared like on the internet or with other foreign allies. So once they end the lockdown and blackout, then they can speak with their Kashmir politicians about seceding and the course of action they'll take.
Right.
And then my question, oh, sorry. My question is, let's say that Kashmir were to gain independence. Do you think that they could be sustaining themselves since they've never really been free before? Do you think they have like the means to sustain themselves and like explain further?
I do believe Kashmir has the ability to sustain itself just because previously, before the violence has increased over the years, they have basically sustained themselves without the Indian government like coming in and interfering with their internal affairs. And also, like I mentioned, they have a thriving economy, especially with agriculture, in which they make like they farm fruits and vegetables and make handcraft things, and they have foreign allies in which they send it to and like pay for it. So they have a thriving economy. They had a government and they had a Kashmir politician who fought for them. So I do believe Kashmir will be able to sustain as an independent nation.
Thank you. Good job.
I have a question. So Kashmir's location, just geopolitically, is kind of an intense area, just being in between India and Pakistan, and also just having China, and the tense relationships between those three countries. So, if war broke out between those three countries, do you think Kashmir would be able to adequately defend itself?
Under the Indian Independence Act, and when uh, India and Pakistan became independent from Britain, like I said, there was no prior negotiation, so their army and water supply were not adequately split mutually or evenly. So personally, I do not think Kashmir will be able to defend them like army wise, like military wise, they won't be able to defend themselves because even though they do have a thriving economy and government, they are still going to be a developing nation in which you still need the aid of other foreign allies.